want to talk to you about why knowing about the past is essential for addressing climate change. This might seem surprising. Global warming is happening now, isn't it? The issues are about changing how we do things now so that we'll have a habitable planet in the future, right? What's history got to do with it? How can studying history possibly help with the future? The problem is that we've known about climate change for a long time. But in the years since corporations, politicians, and publics began to understand what was going on, things have actually got significantly worse. This isn't something that scientists are trained to explain. Scientific research has demonstrated that climate change is anthropogenic, that is, caused by humans. But to be able to talk about why humans are destroying their only habitat and don't seem to be able to stop, or even to want to stop, we actually need a much better understanding of humans. We need expertise from researchers who specialize in studying humans. The fact is that when we say that climate change is being caused by humans, what we actually mean is that it's being caused by human ideas and values, which come out of long, complicated human histories. Climate change is caused by the workings of human systems of power and the inequalities and injustices on which they're based. These have been built through thousands of years of imperialism and colonialism. Climate crisis is the inevitable result of millennia, during which states and wealthy elites built their power on the subjugation of ordinary people, the extraction of resources, exploitation of ecologies, and the deliberate destruction of all ways of thinking, living, and knowing that contested their imperial values. The reason that things have got so bad is quite specifically because these long-standing values were harnessed to fossil fuel technologies. Fossil fuels provided an unparalleled source of energy. As we know, this has had devastating consequences for the local populations and environments from which they're extracted, levels of urban pollution, and of course for the Earth's atmosphere. They need not have done. Fossil fuels are just decomposed plants and other organisms. You can't make anyone do anything. It was the deep-rooted values and ideologies of those particular humans who put them to work in the service of profit, convenience, and power that created the present situation. I don't believe that we're going to be able to deal with climate change until we get to grips with how, and importantly, why humans think as they do. And when I say deal with, I don't just mean mitigation, trying to change now in order to keep temperatures down. I mean the other challenge, adaptation, which is learning to live well within a changing climate and all its unfolding consequences. This requires us to think differently, which we can't do unless we understand better how we got here. I want to go back to what I said about ambitious imperial states deliberately destroying ways of living, knowing, and thinking that contested their values. This is important to grasp. In westernized modernity, we tend to be trapped in a narrative of progress. This makes us think that everything is always improving on what went before. Where we are now becomes the best possible place to be. Progress narratives assume that we are always expanding and perfecting what we know and how we know it. Our economies must always grow. This leads us to think that whatever has been lost, silenced, or delegitimized along the way must be less valuable than what was preserved and became part of modern Western thought. Within a progress narrative, you don't lose or ignore things if they're valuable. But this means that the knowledge of Indigenous peoples around the world, of women, of poor people everywhere, of people without university degrees, of any less powerful group, is made to seem less advanced, less sophisticated, and less useful. This way of looking at the past as a progress towards the present is not there by accident. It's designed to lock into place contemporary power structures and values. It is there to make sure that it's very hard for other voices to contest these without seeming backwards, irrational, less legitimate. Environmental activists who contest the assumptions of westernized modernity know this very well. A progress narrative is designed to keep anything that's against modern forms of progress off the table and out of the public consciousness. To give you some idea of how far back these ideas go, here are some images from ancient Assyria, an empire that covered much of ancient Iraq, Armenia, and northern Syria. It was an empire that existed in various forms from about 2,500 years BC to about 600 BC. It came and went in various ways, but there was a sort of solid consistency of ideas around this empire as the epitome of civilization. and a great global power. So what we see in these images are, and these are sculptures that have been preserved and now in the British Museum. So on the top left-hand corner, we have the King of Kings taming a lion. So it's a powerful image of a man subduing wild animals, dangerous wild animals, and being more powerful and stronger than they were. The image next to it shows a domesticated horse, series of horses, sorry, that are being bridled and ridden by a powerful man. At the bottom, we see the human consequences of this empire. So you, as well as subduing nature by either destroying wild animals or causing other wild animals to become domesticated and to serve human needs. Humans, the majority of humans, are also suffering from this empire and being tamed and domesticated and forced, many of them, to perform agrarian labor, so farming in order to grow crops, which are then become the basis of taxation and support cities and elite lifestyles. And this is not a particularly pleasant way for a lot of people to live. Many of them might rather be doing their own thing and controlling their own landscapes and food sources. And on the bottom right, we see the destruction of nature that's also going to support this empire. So here we have logging of the great cedars of Lebanon, which are being transported by sea for imperial building projects. Now, these images all seem as if they're criticisms of the civilization, but this is its imperial propaganda. These are the things that it's proud of. And I think this is the important thing to note about, to understand about this example and many other ones. The values of civilization, the thing that a civilization says is important about itself, is precisely its triumph over nature, its organization of large populations to serve what are presented as common needs, but do tend to serve elite power. And to support the growth of armies and military activities to conquer more and more people and bring them inside this empire. And these are the things, these are the values that are celebrated, and this sense that that great human societies triumph over nature and subordinate it and use it as they will is absolutely inherent to how we think now. And I think it's very important to recognize that this has been the dominant way of thinking in ambitious states for about 5,000 years. Now, the Assyrian Empire didn't control very much territory in global terms. The vast majority of people in that period lived outside empires. They were pastoralists, they were hunter-gatherers. They lived their own lives and tried to evade being part of a state. But of course, as we can see, by the time we come towards the present, this model of civilization that triumphs over nature rather than living in harmony with it is the one that has become dominant. And I think it's knowledge of this and recognition that it needn't necessarily have been this way, that there were many other ways of living that were deliberately destroyed in order to make space for this particularly devastating way of living. I think if we understand that, we can see climate change as part of a long continuity of particular ways of doing things that we can choose not to perpetuate any further. This is just one example of what one can learn by looking at human pasts, and there's a whole wealth of other stuff that one could be thinking about. But I think what I want to emphasize here is that it's urgently important that young people are imaginative and thoughtful about the ways in which change can be driven. It's very obvious that the priorities and areas of expertise that have so far been at the forefront of climate conversations aren't succeeding despite their best attempts. The focus on STEM subjects has generally served a capitalist economy rather well, and not necessarily served climate change activism particularly well. It's removed whole areas of thought away from places of influence and really narrowed down and thinned out the kinds of thinking that have been at the table in climate discussion. And so I'd like to really stress here that understanding how things came to be as they are is absolutely essential for being able to think about how they might be different. Thank you.